Steelers Nation, preseason is here and we just witnessed some absolute game changers hit the field in Week 1. While some players just cemented their roster spots with jaw-dropping performances, others might be packing their bags sooner than expected. This breakdown is going to shock you because the depth chart might look completely different after what we just saw. Before we get into who shined and who struggled, make sure you smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell because we're bringing you the most detailed Steelers analysis every single day. You don't want to miss a single update as roster cuts approach. Alright Steelers fans, let's talk about what just went down in preseason Week 1. This game wasn't just another exhibition. This was a statement game for dozens of young players fighting for their NFL lives. Every snap mattered, every route mattered, every tackle mattered. And when that final whistle blew, the coaching staff had some serious decisions to make because several players just made their cases impossible to ignore. At the same time, some veterans and hyped rookies left us scratching our heads wondering what happened out there. Let's start with the winners, and we have to begin with the name that's got everyone buzzing, Drew Allar. Now, if you've been following Penn State football, you know exactly who this kid is. The 6'5" quarterback from Medina, Ohio, has been turning heads in Happy Valley, and while he's not currently on the Steelers roster, the connection here is absolutely fascinating. Allar represents everything the Steelers look for in a quarterback prospect. He's got the size, the arm talent, the intelligence, and that classic pro-style pedigree that Pittsburgh has always valued. During this preseason window, while Allar continues developing at Penn State, the Steelers are evaluating their own quarterback depth, and you better believe that scouts and front office personnel are keeping tabs on prospects like Allar for future draft cycles. The winner aspect of Drew Allar in this context is really about what he represents for the Steelers' future planning. With questions surrounding the long-term quarterback situation in Pittsburgh, having a local prospect of Allar's caliber potentially available in the next draft creates enormous excitement. Pennsylvania products have always held special meaning in Pittsburgh, and the thought of a Penn State quarterback leading the Steelers has fans dreaming big. The preseason games give us a window into what the organization values at the position, and when you watch Allar's tape and compare it to what Pittsburgh emphasizes, the fit is undeniable. The way he processes defenses, his pocket presence, and his ability to push the ball downfield all align with what the Steelers have historically wanted from the quarterback position. But let's get back to the actual players who were on the field for Pittsburgh in Week 1, because we have some legitimate winners who showed out. Germie Bernard is a name you need to remember right now. This wide receiver came into camp with something to prove, and after his preseason debut, he's making it nearly impossible for the coaching staff to cut him. Bernard displayed everything you want to see from a young receiver trying to crack an NFL roster. His route running was crisp and decisive. He showed excellent hands, catching everything thrown his way. But what really stood out was his football IQ and his ability to find soft spots in zone coverage. That's not something you can always teach, that's instinctive. The wide receiver room in Pittsburgh is crowded. We all know that George Pickens is the #1 guy. We know that the team invested resources in this position. But behind the established names, there's a fierce competition happening, and Germie Bernard just jumped to the front of the pack. His performance in Week 1 showed that he's not just a camp body. He's not just someone filling out the practice squad. This is a player who could genuinely contribute on game days. When you factor in special teams value, which every bubble player needs to bring, Bernard's case gets even stronger. He showed the willingness to get down the field on kicks and punts, and that versatility is exactly what keeps you employed in the NFL. What makes Bernard's performance even more impressive is the context. He wasn't catching passes from the starting quarterback with the first-team offensive line giving him clean opportunities. He was working with backup and third-string players, dealing with pressure, dealing with timing issues, and still managing to make plays. That's what coaches notice. That's what gets you on the final 53-man roster. The ability to produce regardless of circumstances is invaluable, and Bernard demonstrated that quality in spades. Now let's talk about Kaden Wetjen, Another massive winner from Week 1. If you're not familiar with Wetjen, you're about to be. This kid is electric with the ball in his hands. His speed is legitimate NFL caliber, and what he showed as a return specialist has people in the organization extremely excited. The Steelers have been searching for consistency in the return game for years. They've cycled through multiple players trying to find someone who can be both reliable and explosive. Wetjen might just be that answer. His kickoff return in the preseason opener was a thing of beauty. The vision to find the lane, the acceleration to explode through it, and the top-end speed to pull away from defenders all flashed on one play. But it wasn't just one return, it was his consistency throughout the game. He didn't fair catch when he should have returned, he didn't make mental errors, he secured the football and made smart decisions. For a young player in his first NFL action, that poise is remarkable. Special teams coordinators dream about finding players like this because field position is so crucial in the modern NFL. If Wetjen can consistently give the offense favorable starting field position, he's providing value that goes beyond stat sheets. Beyond his return ability, Wetjen also showed intriguing potential as a receiver. He's got that similar profile to other smaller, speedy receivers who found success in the NFL. He can take the top off a defense. He can work out of the slot. He creates mismatches in space. The offensive coaching staff is definitely thinking about ways to get him involved in the passing game because that speed translates. If he can develop his route tree and continue showing reliable hands, you're looking at a multi-dimensional weapon. Even if his primary value is on special teams this year, the developmental upside as an offensive player makes him incredibly intriguing for the future. The winners list also has to include some of the defensive players who absolutely dominated their matchups. While specific names outside our title focus are numerous, the overall defensive intensity in Week 1 was exactly what Pittsburgh fans wanted to see. The physicality was there. The pursuit to the ball was relentless. Young linebackers were flying around making plays. Defensive backs were competing for every 50-50 ball. This is Steelers football. This is the identity that's been built over decades, and seeing it show up in preseason Week 1 with hungry young players is incredibly encouraging. The defensive line depth in particular looked much better than expected. Getting pressure with four-man rushes, setting the edge against the run, and showing versatility to kick inside on passing downs all happened throughout the game. For a team that needs to rebuild and reload the defensive front, seeing young players step up is critical. Every quarterback hit, every tackle for loss, and every run stuff in preseason is building toward the regular season. The coaching staff can build on these performances, and the players who showed out defensively are creating competition that will make the entire unit better. Now, as much as we love celebrating the winners, we have to address the losers from Week 1. And this isn't about being negative or piling on guys. This is about honest evaluation because the NFL is a performance-based business. If you don't produce, someone else will take your spot. That's the reality, and some players from Week 1 left the door wide open for their competition. Let's start with the offensive line situation. While we won't name specific individuals who struggled because the evaluation process is ongoing, there were clear issues with protection in certain situations. The Steelers have invested heavily in rebuilding their offensive line over recent years, but depth is always a concern. When second and third string offensive linemen are getting beat consistently, it raises questions about what happens if injuries occur during the regular season. The players who struggled in pass protection during Week 1 are absolutely on notice. The coaching staff needs to know they have capable backups who can step in if needed, and anyone who got beaten repeatedly has work to do. The challenge for offensive linemen in preseason is that your mistakes are incredibly obvious. When a defensive player blows past you and hits the quarterback, everyone sees it. There's no hiding. There's no excuse. And for young offensive linemen trying to make the roster, those negative plays pile up quickly in the evaluation process. The losers from Week 1 on the offensive line need to have much better performances in the coming weeks, or they'll find themselves looking for work elsewhere. Another losing group from Week 1 were the running backs who failed to distinguish themselves. The running back room has some established players, but behind them, there's competition for those final roster spots. The players who had opportunities to carry the ball in Week 1 and didn't create anything positive are in trouble. The NFL running back position is brutally competitive. If you're not producing yards, if you're not showing burst, if you're not contributing on special teams or as a receiver, you're expendable. Some of the running backs in Week 1 looked hesitant, dancing behind the line instead of hitting holes decisively. That's a killer in the evaluation process. What makes it worse for these running backs is that this league is filled with talented players at the position looking for opportunities. Practice squads across the NFL have running backs who could step in and contribute. If the Steelers' running backs on the roster bubble don't show significant improvement, the front office won't hesitate to look externally for upgrades. It's harsh, but it's reality. The players who failed to flash in Week 1 are running out of opportunities to prove they belong. We also have to talk about some of the defensive backs who struggled in coverage. Getting beat deep in preseason is understandable to a degree. You're facing NFL receivers, timing isn't always perfect, and you're still building chemistry with your fellow defensive backs. But there were some coverage breakdowns in Week 1 that were concerning. Blown assignments, poor technique, and getting physically dominated at the catch point all showed up on film. For defensive backs trying to make the roster, those mistakes are potentially fatal to your chances. The Steelers have always prided themselves on physical, intelligent defensive back play. If you're getting exposed in preseason, what's going to happen against NFL starting receivers? The coaching staff has to ask that question, and if the answer isn't promising, changes will be made. The defensive backs who lost their matchups in Week 1 need to respond immediately. They need to study the film, correct the mistakes, and come out in Week 2 with completely different performances. Otherwise, they'll be watching the regular season from their couches. Another concerning area was some of the special teams' miscues. Missed tackles on coverage units, poor lane discipline, and alignment errors all happened during the game. Special teams are the great equalizer for roster bubble players. If you can't contribute there, your value drops dramatically. The players who made mistakes on special teams in Week 1 are absolutely losers in this evaluation because those are the plays that stick in coaches' minds. It's one thing to struggle on offense or defense where there's scheme and complexity involved. But special teams is often about effort, discipline, and execution. If you're not bringing those qualities, you're telling the coaching staff that you're not ready for the NFL. The fascinating thing about preseason Week 1 is that it sets the tone for everything that follows. The players who won are now being evaluated on whether they can maintain that level. Can Germie Bernard do it again in Week 2? Can Kaden Wetjen prove his performance wasn't a fluke? The pressure is on to show consistency because one good game doesn't guarantee anything. But the players who lost in Week 1 are in an even tougher spot. They're now playing catch-up. They need to not just improve, but dramatically outperform expectations in the next opportunity. The margin for error has disappeared. Looking ahead at the roster construction, the performances from Week 1 have created some fascinating scenarios. If Bernard continues producing, the wide receiver room suddenly has a difficult decision to make. Do you keep an extra receiver and sacrifice depth elsewhere? If Wetjen has locked down the return jobs, does that impact other players who are counting on special teams' value to make the roster? These are the questions that keep coaching staffs up at night during August. The beauty of preseason is that it's genuinely competitive. These aren't scripted outcomes. These are real players fighting for real jobs with real financial and career implications. When you watch these games with that context, every play matters so much more. That contested catch Bernard made? That could be the difference between a roster spot and unemployment. That explosive return from Wetjen. That could be the beginning of a long NFL career. The stakes are incredibly high, and that's what makes preseason football so compelling for the true fans who understand what's happening beneath the surface. Vavak! For the Steelers organization, Week 1 provided crucial data points. The scouting department, the coaching staff, and the front office are all compiling information about who can play and who can't. They're evaluating not just physical skills, but mental toughness, coachability, and adaptability. The players who responded well to coaching during the week of practice following Week 1 are gaining ground. The players who made excuses or failed to show improvement are losing ground. It's a constant evaluation process, and the decision makers are watching everything. The connection back to Drew Allar and future planning is also significant here. When the Steelers evaluate their current quarterback depth in preseason games, they're also thinking long-term. If they're not satisfied with what they have beyond the immediate starters, that influences draft strategy. Having a prospect like Allar potentially available creates options. It gives the front office hope that they can secure their future at the position through the draft, rather than expensive free agency. Every preseason snap the current quarterbacks take is being measured against what's available in future draft classes. What's clear from Week 1 is that this team still has plenty of roster spots up for grabs. The coaching staff hasn't made final decisions. The players who won in Week 1 have momentum but not security. The players who lost have time but not much. The next 2 preseason games will be absolutely critical. We're going to see position battles intensify. We're going to see desperation from players who know they're running out of chances. And we're going to see some players rise to the occasion while others fade away. For Germie Bernard, the path forward is clear. Keep doing what you did in Week 1. Be consistent, be reliable, and keep making plays. Show that you can play multiple receiver positions. Prove your value on special teams. Do all the little things that coaches notice. If he can maintain this trajectory, he's not just making the roster, he could be active on game days, contributing to the offense. That's the dream for any undrafted or lesser-known player coming into camp. Kaden Wetjen needs to continue showcasing that game-breaking speed while also proving he can be trusted. Ball security is paramount for return specialists. If you fumble in a preseason game, that can end your season before it starts. Wetjen needs to protect the football, continue making smart decisions, and when he gets his opportunities, take advantage. If he can give the Steelers even 1 or 2 explosive returns during the regular season, he'll have paid off his roster spot. But he needs to keep proving it throughout August. The losers from Week 1 face a different challenge. They need to respond with urgency but not panic. Panicking leads to more mistakes. They need to study the film honestly, identify the technical or mental errors that led to poor performance, and correct them in practice. Then they need to come out in Week 2 and play with confidence and aggression. The coaches want to see growth. They want to see players who can handle adversity and bounce back. If someone who struggled in Week 1 has a dominant Week 2 performance, that tells the staff something important about that player's character and resilience. The reality is that most of these bubble players won't make the final 53-man roster. That's just math. But many of them could land on the practice squad, and that's still a valuable outcome. Practice squad players get paid, get coaching, get development, and can be elevated to the active roster during the season. Some of the players who are losers in the initial roster cut could end up being winners by season's end if they handle the process correctly. Staying ready, staying professional, and staying positive can lead to opportunities when injuries inevitably occur. Steelers Nation should be encouraged by what Week 1 revealed. The team has depth in some unexpected areas. Young players are stepping up and competing. The culture of hard work and accountability is clearly present. These are all positive signs for the regular season. Even the players who struggled provide value because they're making the starters better in practice. They're creating competition that keeps everyone sharp. A complacent roster is a losing roster, and there's no complacency when guys are fighting for jobs every single day. As we move forward into Week 2 of preseason, keep your eyes on these names. Watch how Germie Bernard builds on his performance. Watch whether Kaden Wetjen can replicate his explosiveness. Watch the players who struggled and see if they respond. And keep thinking long-term about prospects like Drew Allar, who represent the future of this franchise. The Steelers are always planning multiple years ahead, and the preseason games are just one piece of a much larger puzzle. The coaching staff deserves credit for creating an environment where players can succeed. The game plan in preseason is designed to evaluate players, not necessarily to win the game. That means putting guys in positions where their skills can show up on film. The players who took advantage of those opportunities are the winners. The players who didn't are the losers. But everyone will get more chances, and that's what makes the next few weeks so critical and so entertaining for those of us who love the evaluation process. So Steelers fans, what did you think of Week 1? Are you as high on Germie Bernard as I am after watching his performance? Do you think Kaden Wetjen has locked down the return job? And looking ahead, how important is it for the Steelers to start planning for a quarterback like Drew Allar in future drafts? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because I want to hear from you. This is your team, and your opinions matter. Make sure you smash that like button if you enjoyed this breakdown. Subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on those notifications so you never miss our Steelers coverage. We've got daily updates coming throughout the preseason and into the regular season. Thanks for watching, and here we go, Steelers!